In this episode, I get to speak with Brett Trembly, the mind behind Get Staffed Up, a game changer in virtual staffing for U.S. law firms, and the owner of Trembly Law. Brett shares his insights into the elite virtual assistants that he provides in the expansion into Latin America, and the reason behind writing his latest book, 24 Months to Freedom. Listen in for more. Before we get into this episode, we would like to thank our Season 4 sponsor, Affirm Investigative Solutions, your go-to litigation support company. Without them, we would not be able to keep upgrading and integrating new concepts to this growing podcast. If you would like to take your support further, feel free to hit the support button on our Let's Talk Paralegal website so we can continue providing quality and empowering content for you and all our listeners. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. Today, we have an amazing topic, but an amazing guest to talk about the topic. And his name is Brett Trembly. I hope I said that right. And he's with Get Staffed Up, but he's also an author, which I just recently found out, on his new book called 24 Months to Freedom. So without further ado, Brett, you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
I would love to. Etta, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm pretty fired up to be here today. And yeah, like you said, my name is Brett Trembly. You nailed it. You said it just right. So I'm a lawyer. I arrived here in South Florida, where you are as well, in 2005. Went to law school and have been doing. I still have a law firm and Get Staffed Up. So just very involved in the legal community, and I love it.
I didn't know that. Okay, that's cool that you still have a law firm. What practice?
So we do like whatever business owners need. We do business, corporate litigation, employment defense, do a lot of franchise law. So we're really trying to help the small and medium sized businesses out there that are providing all the jobs in the economy. We're really fighting for those people.
I love it. I love that you're going for the small businesses. I feel like there's a huge gap, right? And I spoke about this in prior conversations throughout the podcast, but there's a huge gap between competing with the Silicon Valley and the Wall Street companies of the world. So it's really nice that there's companies out there supporting each other and providing solutions, right? Which is kind of what we were going to talk about. So great segue. So today we're going to talk about delegation, and what you said was, and I love it, it says get more by doing less. And I hope I got that right, Kurt. And
yeah.
Let's talk about that, because you mentioned also the 80-20 rule, which I am a big believer as well. I'm a big believer of the E-Myth. For anybody that has not read the book, that's a great book too.
Great one.
So let's talk about that. Tell me your thoughts.
Sure. So I started my law firm. It's called Trembly Law Firm again in 2011 with just myself, and I mean, like, it was like a shared office space. So there was one person that answered everybody's phone, which is a terrible move to share a phone number like that. But I didn't know any better at the time. Like, oh, sure, I don't have to go get a phone number. And then, but it was literally just patched it right through to me without any questions. It was just like a screener. So I was answering all my own calls at this time, 2011, like still sending faxes, licking my own envelopes, trying to network, and I hit the ground running networking, but I hit a ceiling where I couldn't get past about $9,000 to $10,000 a month in revenue. And some months were like, half that, and you don't know where your next paycheck from yourself is coming from, right? Because you're self-employed. And so after 2.5 years of struggling and looking back, just being so filled with anxiety, and people all handle those phases differently in their lives. But like me, I put on a good front, but just being terrified of, being homeless, I guess, or going broke. Looking back, I wish I hadn't been so worried, but that takes a toll on you and your mental health and your body. I finally was convinced to get help, and I started hiring. And once the first hire went well, I'll give myself credit, because at that point I said, okay, I think I can keep doing this. And I put almost all my time into finding really great people and developing hiring systems for finding and screening systems, and how do I attract the coolest and the best. And that's how my law firm just grew like crazy. We've got almost 12 attorneys now. Pandemic was, we're not growing like we used to pre-pandemic, but it was, it gave the credibility of, hey, like I'm good at hiring and I know how to hire. And then about 2018, I launched this company to help other people do it, just with a lot cheaper talent than you find domestically.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? What got you into that? I mean, I know South Florida is like a melting pot of cultures, so I'm sure that had a little element, or a little decision in that. But tell me a little bit about that because I
Yeah.
mean, where did you get that? It's like I know it's not as random, but I mean, it's a little,
I know. Well, I have a business partner. He's also an attorney, and he had a transactional real estate firm. And technically, although him and I like to like playfully argue about this, right? It was his idea first, where he disappeared at the end of 2017, and we used to like have breakfast and talk all the time, and I didn't see him for like 6 weeks, and he resurfaces, if you will, and he's got 5 offshore staff people, and I'm like, what on earth, where did this come from? So I asked him to get one for me for my law firm, a marketing assistant, and he was like, oh, I think I can really help people do this, I can. And he threw out what he thought a business model would be for him, and I had a lot of experience in entrepreneurial circles and had read a ton of books, and I had already designed what I would like my next endeavor to be. And I told him what I thought it could look like. And then I went and made his first 2 sales for him. And he's like, all right, let's do this business together. And it's been a really fantastic partnership because I do the marketing. Like early on, I was all marketing and sales, and he was all back end systems. And then as we've grown, I'm the visionary and he's the integrator, or that would be called, in for those of you that don't use Traction, for example, I'm the CEO, he's the COO. And so I do these kind of things. I meet people, I create relationships. I'm very involved in legal community stuff. Now, along with our enormous team, because we're already approaching 200 employees at this point, internally only. And
Wow.
so, we're a large group.
Congrats.
So, yeah, that's the long answer to where it came from. But it was like, hey, we're onto something. How do we help other people do what we've done? Because it was such a pain point for me to make that first hire, and it was like, how am I going to pay for this person? I don't have the money. Where am I going to get the money? But you don't have the money until you hire someone. You kind of like have to put the cart before the horse in that sense, but it's really not. But that's the way our minds think, right? Like, well, I get the money first and then I hire someone. But you hire someone to help you be more profitable. So,
Yeah, you're not going to grow unless you actually invest in it, right? That's half the battle right there, especially when I do consulting for law firms.
yeah,
You know, for lawyers, and no offense, because not all of them are like this and not all of them are created equal, but it's a hard sell, it's a hard sell to let them know, hey, you might need a consultant and a process development and an operations person because not everybody thinks like you, and not everybody, you guys go to law school, you don't go to business school. And like you said, you read a lot, you taught yourself, a lot of it is self-taught. But when you're in the grunt, and you're in the weeds of it,
yeah,
it's nice to have somebody there to help you that's already done it, that's, has reputable information for you, and pretty much has the roadmap for you, which is what you were talking about before. And I think maybe that was a nice little segue too. This is what your book is all about, right? Putting the right people in the right places, and really knowing when to delegate, how to delegate, and to whom to delegate it to.
yeah, yeah. So the book is designed for like smaller law firms who are just doing almost everything themselves, and it is tough to get over that. So I feel your pain, even though I haven't been in those conversations with you. I've had those conversations, and lawyers are so good at, like, we don't know what we don't know, and then you present a solution, and before you're done presenting the solution, they're already saying things to like knock that down, and you're like, you didn't even consider that, and like you didn't even consider that you didn't consider that. So anyway, I'm sure we could go back and forth on that all
Oh
day.
yeah, it's very
uh
interesting conversations, especially
yeah,
when I myself was in that mindset, right? I always felt like maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not the person for that. And then I kind of, again, with that whole mindset thing, I kind of realized, no, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I have other clients that have said that it works, and why am I questioning myself? Because sometimes you get into these rooms that you think you're too big or too small, depending on where you're at. And that kind of changes the dynamic of the conversation. So let's talk about your book and your inspiration, which I'm assuming it has something to do with everything else that we talked about to tie it all together.
Of course.
But maybe not. Maybe you put the cart before the horse. So I don't know.
So the book's geared towards, if like you're a 50-person law firm, right? You already have staff because you have to. Like that's when you talk to a smaller law firm owner, you're like, show me a law firm or a business that's grown and it hasn't been through hiring. Like you can't do that. So I lay out the order in which I argue you should start hiring and when and how long it takes to onboard and then how long it takes to train and what you should give, what you should delegate. Like, for example, the very first hire, and I will die on this hill, but the very first hire anyone should make is an executive assistant for you, the business owner, the law firm owner, because your business has your time. That's whatever you do with your time is what's going to happen with your business. And when you're bogged down in all the little minutia, it's amazing. Well, the stats bear it out. Like solo lawyers and small law firm attorneys bill or collect like 1 hour per day on average, like 1.1 or something like that. If you look at the Clio Trends report, because you're just doing so many, you're wearing like 50 hats, you're doing everything. And so protecting your time, but I talk about how to find the right person and who to look for. And of course, having a virtual staffing company, we're gearing it towards this is why it's so much more efficient and cheaper and better, because you can't find really good people in the US to work for $10 an hour. Like that doesn't exist anymore. How's that person going to have an honest life or living and be happy? And so we go through the 7 positions and I argue that at the end of those hiring those positions, you're not sailing on yachts and you're not free for the rest of your life. You're at the point where you can lift your head up and breathe and have revenue coming in and be taking care of your clients and then say, okay, what's next? Like, what do I really want from this thing I'm doing called running a law firm?
Yeah, I love it. You look at it as the business owner, right? Because sometimes it's really hard for us to separate from the business owner mindset to the actual the practitioner or I shouldn't say practitioner, the technician really is what it is. And it's hard again, right? It has a lot to do with listening, being open to new ideas and innovated. And I always like to leave the audience with a practical, tactical, tip or trick. And I feel like maybe you can answer this or provide your own insight as to why virtual, right? Because a lot of attorneys were like, no, right? Like pre-pandemic, negative. Like nobody wanted to go virtual. It wasn't a thing. NDA, confidentiality, cybersecurity breach. Like they threw the book at everyone, right? And then all of a sudden COVID happened and it's like, well, if you don't do virtual, you're out of business and you're out of gas. So I guess now it's an easier conversation, but why virtual?
Yeah, it's funny you say all those things because our number one by a mile objection when we started the business was, well, how do I work with somebody virtually? So we were in the education business and we're saying, look, it's possible. They can do 98% of things that someone could do here. Like if someone's down the hall from you, you don't see them and all your communication is via email anyway, and it's mostly virtual, except getting up and walking into their office and having a conversation, right? Then it's funny because you and I haven't had this conversation, but the pandemic hit and just obliterated our biggest objection.
Yeah.
Like the pandemic hits and I think everyone in the world's like, oh my God, what's happening to my business? And then like 3 weeks later, it was like just gangbusters, and we look, we worked very hard at finding the absolute best, but we also had good timing. And that really allowed us to be the leader in this field. And the reason that I'm a law firm owner, I know how it goes. When your overhead just keeps increasing with your revenue, it's like, well, why? Why do I just keep doing this? Like, oh yeah, more's coming in, but revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. I don't want to throw out too many little one-off
No, I love it.
here and there, but like people always talk about, oh, my firm's doing this, this, and this. If you're a $2 million firm, but you're spending 1.999. It's like,
Right.
what, that's not a profitable business, and you can't comfortably and prudently represent your clients unless you're running a profitable endeavor, because
Yeah.
you're gonna, I've seen too many people rob from Peter to pay Paul, and it's not fair to your clients. And most people are like, oh, it's not about the money. Well, it doesn't have to be about the money, but it has to be about the principle of, you know, your family deserves for you to not be owned by your law firm, and be controlled by all these external factors, and without a comfortable profit margin, it's just miserable. And
Yeah.
so, what's the point? You should go work for someone else.
And you're always chasing, right? Like you're always chasing the next client, and you're always focusing on
Mhm.
how can I make more money? How can I do this? How can I get more, networking and marketing, and everybody goes straight to the marketing, which is fine, but okay, your marketing goes really well. Now what are you going to do? How are you going to
Now
handle
what?
all these new clients,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
upskilling your current staff, onboarding other staff members, knowing what to do with them and where to place them, and providing them the skills and the tools that they need in order to succeed, in order to be your dream builder, is essential, right?
Yep.
Because you can invest in the marketing, you can have the 5 stars on Google, you can have everything, the raving reviews and the testimonials and everything that Marketing 101 teaches you in a nutshell. You can take a crash course and do it, and you can hire a marketing strategist, do all the things. But what are you going to do with all those new clients? How are you going to assure that your customer service is not going to suffer, that your client experience will not lead to negative reviews after you've worked so hard to reputation is key, right? Like nobody's going to hire you if your prior clients are talking bad about you. Like it's just
Yep.
not going to happen.
Yep.
I love it.
If this wasn't a 20 or 30-minute podcast, I got a million responses and stories and all those things. But just, to summarize, then people get overwhelmed, and then they throw their hands up, and they're like, and then they go back to doing everything themselves for all those reasons. So that's why it's important to, we're not coaches, we're not advisors. That's who we work with and where we get a lot of our clients from. People saying, look, you got to get more help, contact, get staffed up. And that's what we do, is we just find you great people, because it's fun to surround yourself with great people, whether they're here or in Latin America, which is, by the way, where we source from, is Latin America. A lot of people in this sort of out staffing VA world are in the Philippines, and I think that's a big competitive advantage for us.
Yeah, no, I love it. It usually opens doors, especially being in South Florida, founded in South Florida, bilingual, right? Because there's a
Yep.
lot of Hispanic, now Portuguese/Brazilians that are coming in. And that's funny. It's going to be a great segue for a prior episode that I recorded with a marketing firm that markets for attorneys looking for, Spanish speaking clients. So, it's a different world, right? You have to market different. You have to provide services differently. You have additional documentations that you need. So you need a staff that can handle the trifecta, right?
Yeah.
So that's really important. And I
Yeah.
love that. Well, thanks, Brett. That was
Of
amazing. Thank
course.
you.
Of course, Etta, let me just finish. For
Go
anyone
ahead.
who's wants more information, we created a landing page for your listeners. So it's getstaffedup.com/let's talk paralegal, with a dash in between the let's and then the talk. And like, if you want to grab a book, the link's there. If you want more information, the link's there. And there's also a discount just for anybody who is a listener of your podcast.
Awesome. So all the links will be on the description on both the podcast and the YouTube version. So check those out, and make sure you check out Brett and his amazing Get Staffed Up, his law firm, and really just share and take this conversation outside the podcast, because that's what the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast is all about, creating conversations that live outside the podcast. Thank you so much. That's all for today. And until justice is served, I'll be here. Bye.